Hello again. I am back to read a few more chapters of Stef, Soto, Taco Queen by Jennifer Torres. So the last time I read, everyone was so shocked to see Stef's picture in the newspaper of her serving Viviana Vega on her family's Tia Perla taco truck. So that was an awesome surprise, and I love that moment of the story. And also, speaking of Tia Perla, turns out the city is still trying to enforce these new rules and regulations for food trucks. So everyone that owns a food truck at the commissary kind of got together, and they decided that they need to band together and fight against these new regulations because they're not good for business. And then lastly, when I left off chapter 20, Stef's father signed her permission slip for her to attend the school dance, which turns out that they're going to host in order to raise money for school supplies, or art supplies rather. And on top of that, Stef was nominated as the co-captain, with Julia being the captain of the event planning. So we'll find out how that all turns out. Let's get started. Chapter 21. 2 days later, we hurried into the art studio after school for our first dance planning session. Amanda can't miss soccer practice, but she sends me to the meeting with a brown paper grocery bag filled with some of her mom's old craft magazines. There are some really good ideas for decorations in there, she tells me, promising to work on streamers and garlands at home. We can make them ourselves. I put sticky notes on the pages. Once we're settled in the studio, Mr. Salazar reminds us that to raise the money we need, we're going to have to plan carefully and work quickly. He puts Julia, as captain of the committee, in charge of dividing the rest of us into teams, each responsible for some part of the preparations. It turns out to be the perfect job for her. Her first assignment is for me, her co-captain, and it sounds like I'm in charge of taking notes and basically following her orders. She ignores me when I start to complain. Next, someone needs to be in charge of decorations, she continues. I plop Amanda's bag of magazines down on the table. Amanda's in charge of decorations, I say. She already has some ideas. Julia challenges me. Amanda's not even here. She could work from home, I insist. Julia tosses her hair impatiently. Fine, whatever. Amanda is in charge of decorations. Write that down. We bicker our way down a long list of jobs until every post is filled but one. Publicity, the most important, Julia says, chin raised. Obviously, if no one shows up, it doesn't matter how good the refreshments are or what the decorations are like. And if no one shows up, we don't raise any money for art supplies, I add. I know. I was just about to say that. Julia pauses, waiting for everyone's attention. That's why I'm in charge of publicity. She turns to me and smiles, sparkling sweet. You could still make some posters if you want. Then she murmurs too quietly for Mr. Salazar to hear. Just don't spill any taco sauce on them. Maddie puts her hand over her mouth to quiet her giggles. My face burns and I want to scream. Here I am, finally escaping Tia Perla's salsa-soaked reputation, and Julia has to keep reminding people of it. Arthur comes to my rescue, or at least he tries. Let's see. We need someone who can get a bunch of kids to come to a dance. Well, we have someone who got an actual celebrity to come to her taco truck. And who is that? Here's a hint, Julia. Not you. It was nice of Arthur to try to help, but even if I have to admit, that's more than a stretch. Maybe I'd never say so out loud, but I didn't even recognize Viviana Vega when she was standing right in front of me. That's okay, Arthur, I tell him. Julia could be in charge of publicity. I'll make the posters. That's all I really wanted to do anyway. Our planning hour is almost up. Mr. Salazar, who had retreated to his desk, finally intervenes. All right, he claps his hands. Sounds like you've laid down some groundwork. Next time, you better dig into some actual work. And we do. Amanda gets excused from soccer practice the next week so she can join us in the studio. She brings along an armful of leftover gift wrap and instructions for folding the paper into big origami stars. We'll string a bunch together and hang them from the ceiling, she explains before she and the rest of the decorations team take over one of the art tables to start cutting and creasing. Meanwhile, the refreshments team drafts a letter to the grocery store asking the manager if he'll consider donating soda and ice cream for us to sell at the dance. Mommy has promised to deliver the letter as soon as it's ready. Julia and I float among the groups. When we decide everything is under control, she joins Maddie, who is making a list of nearby schools to invite. I grab a scratch pad and sit down next to Arthur, who is working on his playlist. I know I need to get started on those posters, but I'm not feeling very inspired. Arthur had found an article in one of his magazines filled with the images of vintage concert posters, and lent it to me this morning. I retrieve the magazine from my backpack and start flipping through the pages, hoping one of them will spark an idea. When nothing comes to mind, I decide to take Ms. Barlow's advice and just start. Arthur pulls his headphones down and looks over my shoulder. It's good, he says. Polite, but not enthusiastic. And he's right. Yeah, but it's not exactly what we need. He slides his headphones back on. Nope. Mr. Salazar walks over as I'm tapping my pencil on the paper. Stuck? A little, I say. Remember, he says, you're leading this committee because you care about art. So tell me, why does art matter? He puts his hand over his heart. To you. Why does it matter to you? I close my eyes to think about it for a second. To me, I guess because, well, when I can't think of what to say or how to explain the way I feel, I can usually draw it. Mr. Salazar nods and walks away, and the seed of a new idea begins to grow. When it's time to go home, I put away my sketches and collect my backpack. Before I leave, I overhear Maddie and Julia talking as they clean up their work area. But I just don't get why Arthur is wasting time on a playlist when Stef is going to get Viviana Vega to come. She knows her or something. She doesn't know her, Julia fumes. She sold her a burrito. The syllables sound like rubber bands snapping, one after another. Quickly, I close the door behind me. Maddie can't be serious, can she? I thought all of that Viviana Vega talk had blown over. My hand is closed around the doorknob. I'm about to turn it, go back in there, and correct her. But I change my mind and let it go. Maddie would know I've been eavesdropping, I reasoned. And anyway, if people are going to whisper behind my back, having them say I'm friends with a pop star isn't exactly the worst rumor in the world. Plus, if I look at it one way, really squint at it, I could say I know Viviana Vega. Sort of. I know her better than anyone else in our school, that's for sure. And definitely better than Julia. Chapter 22. But by the end of the week, what started as a crazy rumor has spread like sniffles during cold season. It hasn't gotten any less crazy, but everyone seems to believe it's true, and I'm worried I can't ignore it much longer. 8th graders who've never even looked at me in the hallways are waiting for me at my locker to ask if Viviana Vega is really coming to our gym. 6th graders are tapping me shyly on the shoulder and begging for autographs. I don't know what to say, so mostly I just don't say anything. I just shrug. Oh, you know, I answer. We'll see. Not exactly a yes, but not exactly a no. So you'll never guess, Amanda begins, slamming her lunch tray on the table on Friday afternoon. What Trish asked me at soccer practice yesterday. Geez, easy, Arthur complains. Sorry, she says. Anyway, she asked me to ask you if she could take a picture with Viviana Vega at the big art dance. Crazy, right? Yeah, crazy. I peeled the tinfoil wrapping from one of Poppy's homemade chicken and corn burritos. Somehow they taste even better a day old. And try to sound nonchalant. What did you tell her? Before Amanda could answer, two eighth graders plopped down on the bench across from me at the table. Can you please get Viviana to dedicate a song to me? One of them interrupts. Any song. Just ask her, okay? I give my usual shrug and point to my mouth like it's so full of burrito I can't possibly say a word. Amanda and Arthur stop chewing. They stare at me with their mouths hanging open while I kick them under the table, hoping they get the message. Please don't say anything. Finally, the eighth graders seem satisfied and walk away. Amanda and Arthur are still staring at me when I swallow. What? I ask, taking a sip from my water bottle. What? You're taking dedications now? Arthur asks sarcastically. Well, anyway, this is so your fault. I sputter. If you hadn't opened your mouth in art class, nobody would be expecting me to bring Viviana Vega to school. My fault? Arthur looks as though I just slapped him. His cheeks even turn a little pink. I was trying to stick up for you, and I never said you were going to bring Viviana Vega. Amanda, quietly for once, says, they believe that because you let them. Part of me knows they're right. Part of me is trying to gulp down a big lump of embarrassment. But another part of me is stung to hear all of my best friends call me out, right in the middle of the cafeteria. I don't believe this, I say, shaking my head. You two just can't stand that I'm the one finally getting some attention, can you? Neither of them answers. Arthur pulls on his headphones. He leans his head on one arm while lazily pushing carrot sticks around his plate. Amanda stares at her tray for a couple of minutes before stuffing the apple into her pocket and getting up to leave. We don't talk for the rest of the afternoon, and it feels so much worse than driving home in Tia Perla ever did. Have you ever said something that you regretted or gotten in a fight with your friends? It's hard, right? It's definitely not fun. Let's see what happens. Chapter 23. After Mommy and I help with the shopping at the farmer's market and the prep work at the commissary on Saturday morning, Poppy drives us home and pulls over at the curb in front of our house to drop us off. Mommy hops out and holds the door open for me, but instead of following her, I ask if I can spend the day with Poppy and Tia Perla. My parents look a little surprised, but they agree. Mommy blows kisses from the porch as we drive away. Can we start at the park? I ask. Amanda will be there, and I have to talk to her face to face before the awkward silence between us drifts into another school week. Por qué, no? Papi agrees. We get to the park as parents are staking out spots on the sidelines with beach chairs and big umbrellas. Some of the teams have already started warming up. After a while, I see Amanda jump out of her mom's car, a gym bag slung over her shoulder. She runs over to where her team is practicing and flops down on the grass to put on her cleats. Even if she wanted to, she won't have time to talk to me until after the game is over, so I decide to help Poppy with Tia Perla. He slides into a smooth, easy rhythm when he cooks, almost like he's dancing to one of his banda songs. Only there isn't any music playing, just Poppy's happy hum as he does something he loves and has worked very hard for. As the fields scramble to life with the morning's earliest games, Tia Perla's kitchen starts sizzling with the morning's first orders. I call each one back to Poppy. With a quick nod of his head, he drops a lump of butter onto the grill and waits for it to melt into a shimmering yellow puddle. He adds chicken or beef, then bell peppers and cilantro. As the meat cooks, steam rises, braiding the smells of peppers, onions, and nose-tickling spices before they escape through Tia Perla's blue-tinted vents. It is the first burrito of the day that sells all the others, Poppy always tells me. beckoning new customers with its warm, tempting aroma. When the meat is nearly cooked, Poppy peels 1 or 2 tortillas from a stack inside Tia Perlo's refrigerator and presses them to the grill with his gloved hand. Only a few seconds on each side, just long enough to make the tortillas soft. Then he piles the meat inside and adds a ladleful of salsa. After crumbling salty cojita cheese over the top, he folds the burrito tightly into one fluid motion, then puts the whole thing back onto the grill, slightly toasting the tortilla to give it a little crunch. Finally, he wraps the burrito in a paper before handing it off to me to drop in a bag and hand to the customer, whose mouth by this time is usually watering. I know, mine's watering just hearing that. That sounds delicious. Lunchtime is when Poppy's dance is the trickiest, but also most graceful as he pivots from grill to fridge to sink to cupboard, never missing a beat, never mixing up an order. Lately, though, the nagging buzz of his cell phone breaks his rhythm. When other drivers call to talk taco truck strategy, Poppy pins his phone between his ears and his shoulders while he stirs the meat over the grill. I hear snippets of his conversations as I listen for the long whistle that means Amanda's game is over. To me, all the phone calls sound the same. They start with Poppy shaking his head as he says again and again that it isn't fair, that they have to fight. Before long, the maybes begin. Maybe if we, maybe if they, maybe if I, until Poppy finally says sadly, whatever happens, happens. That's when I want to take the phone out of his hands and say, no, you can't just let things happen. That's how I got into this Viviana Vega mess, and now I have to do something. But first, I need Arthur and Amanda back on my side. The whistle blows. Her game ends. The team starts shaking hands. I know I can't count on Amanda to come looking for me after what happened at lunch on Friday. So I take a bottle of soda from the fridge and ask Poppy if I could run over to say hello. He crouches down and peers out the order window as if trying to size up the distance between us and Amanda. I'll have my phone, I remind him, patting my pocket. That seems to satisfy him. He stands upright again and waves me off. Chapter 24. I hang back, leaning against a tree, and wait until Amanda is done talking with her teammates before I approach her. Hey, I say, holding the cherry soda out in front of me. No thanks, she says when she sees it. Her face is bright red. I know it's from the game, but it makes her look really angry. And part of me wants to turn around and walk back to Tia Perla. But I take a deep breath and pull back the soda. Okay. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about yesterday. It's my fault the Viviana Vega rumor got out of hand, and I shouldn't have taken it out on you and Arthur. Amanda narrows her eyes, smiles, then holds out her hand for the soda. Okay. I finally exhale and we sit down on the grass. I really need your help, I tell her, pulling tiny leaves off sprigs of clover. We have to figure out what to do about this. Help with what? Just tell everyone she's not coming. They'll be mad, but they'll get over it. I've thought of that, but there has to be some other way. A way to get Viviana Vega to come to St. Scholastica. It sounds impossible, but the idea that a celebrity would come to Tia Perla's order window sounded impossible once too. When I explain it to Amanda, she groans and throws herself back on the grass. I'm bracing myself for another argument when she says, fine. Fine? Fine, she repeats, sitting up. We'll think of something. But you better tell Arthur you're sorry. We need him too. Amanda sees her mom waving at her from the fields where her younger brother's game just ended. She gets up and dusts the grass off her shorts, saying, I think you should still just tell the truth and get it over with. I roll my eyes. They'll get stuck up there, she calls over her shoulder. I feel 1,000,000 times better when I get back to Tia Perla. In the time it's taken me to smooth things over with Amanda, another truck has pulled up. Taquizas la Paloma. When Papi isn't on the phone with other drivers, he's meeting with them in person to worry or plot or complain. But I don't have time. To wonder what they're going to do now. I go into the cab and rifle through the glove box for a pen and something to write on. I find an old envelope. That should work. And I take it over to the card table that Papi has set up for our customers. Then I sit, clicking my pen, open, close, trying to think up a plan. Before I know it, 20 minutes has passed. And instead of even one good idea, all I have are a dozen little doodles crammed into a corner of the envelope. I crumble it up and start rubbing my temples. I hear Papi call, "Adios!" as the other truck driver pulls away. Then, instead of getting back inside the truck, he sits down next to me at the card table. "I need your help with something." The drivers are all preparing their speeches for the big city council meeting, Papi explains. He wants to write one too. It needs to be very professional, he says. No mistakes. I can see he doesn't trust his English enough to write the speech on his own. I know he's asking me to write it for him, and I know how embarrassing that must be. But still, I have my own problems right now, and I don't really feel like letting Tia Perla stand in my way again. I look away. It's just that I'm pretty busy right now, I tell him, with school stuff and the dance and everything. My voice trails off. Papi doesn't say anything. He just pats my hand, stands up, and walks back to the truck. A little well of guilt bubbles up in my throat, but just like missing the concert, maybe this is for the best. It's time to get back to brainstorming. I turn over the envelope to make a fresh start. The rest of the afternoon is so busy at the park that Papi says we can call it quits and head back to the commissary early. With the city council meeting just 2 days away, the place crackles with nervous anticipation like drops of water on a sizzling pan. Someone has written, "Save our trucks," across the meeting notice. Drivers huddle over highlighted printouts of the proposed regulations, fine-tuning their arguments. Papi shakes their hands as he leaves the commissary. They wish one another good luck and agree to meet outside City Hall on Monday night so they could walk in as a group. "Remember to put on a clean shirt," one of the drivers jokes, nudging Papi in the ribs. "You're going to be on TV." I wait until we're in the pickup to ask Papi what he meant. "It's not like real TV," Papi explains. "They tape the meeting and show them on the public access channel so people who can't be there in person can still follow along." I don't think anyone really watches it, though. I'm relieved. I know how nervous Papi gets when he has to speak English in front of strangers. Just the thought of him having to speak English on television was making me nervous, too. And now I understand why he wanted my help. So, on Sunday night, when he asks to rehearse his speech, I switch off the TV, put down the laundry, and really try to listen. Reading off index cards, he talks about hard work and supporting a family and raising a daughter. He looks up, unsure, at Mommy and me. She nods encouragingly, and he continues. He talks about opportunity and the American dream, and for the first time in a long time, I remember that sweet strawberry soda feeling when Tia Perla was a dream all three of us shared. And that is the end of chapter 24. Stay tuned for more.